Hi and welcome. My name is Kathy and thank you for joining us today. Today we have with us Pastor Jim Brackett. Pastor Brackett, you taught in college nutrition for over 10 years. Tell us something exciting about nutrition.
Well, there's so much in that field that is fascinating, and the general public doesn't know much about it. Even physicians get about 2 weeks of training in nutrition in their entire course. So the public is so unaware of what's really going on. But one of the latest things that's really, really fascinating is this world of phytochemicals. Now, the word phyto means plant, so we're saying plant chemicals, which is kind of a misnomer because all the nutrients in plants are chemicals. But anyway, they call them phytochemicals. And about 15 years ago, a study was completed. This scientist in Seattle, Washington, found 350 substances in garlic that were not carbohydrate, fat, protein, vitamins, and minerals. They weren't any of that. There were other substances, and he took large amounts, tons of garlic, and extracted these substances until he had a certain amount of each of them, and he would administer these to rats. They look like mice to us, and found that they had remarkable properties, these substances that we didn't know about before. We should have known, I won't get into that, but this was the first study that was done. Some of these substances had antibiotic properties, and some of them were toxic, interestingly enough.
Wow.
And, so the word got out. You might remember this about 15 years ago when the study was completed. He got $11 million, if I remember right, and this was a lot of money back then, from the National Institutes of Health to do this study. And the word was out that garlic was this wonderful stuff, But actually these phytochemicals are in all plants. There's no plant that's a miracle by itself. Any plant is good for people to eat. But an interesting thing turned up as time. Would have been lots of study on this. We now know of over 8,000 substances in plants that are not those regular nutrients, and we call them phytochemicals. A scientist named Jim Joseph took rats and irradiated their brains until they were stupefied, and then took others that were not and compared them, and he had a bath, if you can picture this, about so deep, and the water in it was milky so you couldn't see, and he put these little, and it was about as big as this table maybe, and he put these mice in there, and they would swim around and they would drown unless they found the little platform that was under the water hidden. And it was like a maze. There were a bunch of these platforms, and he was checking to see how long it took for the mice to remember where the platforms were. It's not a left-right maze, but it's a type of maze. And so that was, he checked the regular mice, and then you check the mice that are stupefied, because you irradiate their brains with nuclear radiation, and it takes them much longer. They can hardly do it. And the suspicion was, he suspected, because of what we call anecdotal evidence, that maybe there were some foods that would make their brains repair more from this damage. And they found, sure enough, that there was one food that made their brains repair faster than any other, and they determined that it was the phytochemicals that were doing this, see. And you want to guess what it was?
Which one was it? Garlic?
Blueberries.
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 Wow, well, I'm glad I love blueberries.
Good for your brain.
Wow, blueberries,
And,
good for your brain food.
But again, I'd like to emphasize that that it doesn't have to be blueberries. He found that there was another food that was almost as good as blueberries. Want to guess what it was?
Which was that?
Blackberries.
Blackberries.
And you don't have to have blackberries, because there was another one just about as good as blackberries. It was strawberries, right? See. Anyway, it's a fascinating study.
Wow.
And how the foods that we eat, when they come from plants, phytochemicals, it means they do not exist in animal products.
Wow.
They only are in plants. And it's so amazing, because these chemicals, they interact with each other. And every one of them affects all the others, and they work synergistically. And it's just that God has designed this thing, and man will never. Don't ever buy phytochemicals, because man doesn't know how to do it. Just eat the plant. That's the idea.
Eat the plant.
And I love blueberries, but if you don't have blueberries, you can have blackberries.
Blackberries or
in
strawberries.
fact, phytochemicals are in just about, well, they are in every plant. One thing that the listeners will remember is that there is a phytochemical called lycopene that we think protects men from getting prostate cancer. It's found in many plants, but it's found in tomatoes. And you get 8 times as much of it if you cook the tomato instead of eating it raw.
Wonderful.
Now, it's fine to eat raw tomatoes, but you get more, a lot more if you cook it. Very interesting. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today. And for those of you who would like more information on phytochemicals for brain food, visit our website at www.newstart.com. Thank you for joining us today.